Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the June meeting of the West Planning Committee. We're not expecting a fire drill today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave the building by the two doors, clearly marked, and gather at the rear of the court car park. This meeting is being recorded and will be streamed to YouTube. Any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, can you please let me know now? Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move straight into the agenda. Item one on the agenda is apologies for absence. Josh?
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies from Councillor Henley, Sully and Wren, and also Councillor Mansell as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Item 2, the minutes from the previous meeting on the 28th of April. Is it your wish that I sign those as a true record? Stephen, proposed and seconded by Habib and voted on by all of us, I think. Thank you. Right, that was unanimous. That's good. I'll sign those as soon as you produce them now. Okay. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest other than the standard ones which are already pre-recorded? I'm not seeing any. Okay, thank you. Public question time. I'm not aware of any. No.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's only the ones that are linked to each application that we'll do separately.
Okay, in that case, that's excellent. In that case, we'll move to the first item of business, which is agenda item 5, which is the application 38250388, and that's to consider an application with change of use from offices to 111 apartments for key workers and associated works at Block C, County Hall, Taunton. And the case officer is Gareth Clifford. Gareth, good afternoon and welcome. And I'm eagerly awaiting your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this application is for Block C at County Hall, which I suspect members will be fairly familiar with. So when I come to the photos of it, I will go through those fairly swiftly. So it's a change of use from the existing office use to apartments for key workers, largely in relation to the NHS trust. And that will be controlled through a legal agreement. You've got 111 units of accommodation, which is largely studio provision, but does include 13 one-bedroom units and 6 two-bedroom. So it's required urgently by the NHS Trust to ensure that they've got adequate accommodation at affordable rents for future employees, and in order to achieve the conversion works to meet the current fire regulations, there's a requirement for an external stair tower. It was looked at where this could be provided in relation to the layout of the building, but because of the current layout, the current internal stair in the building and the underground car park, the stair tower effectively has to go on the eastern end of the building. In addition to the stair tower, there are external works to provide new windows and new external cladding to meet the building regulations. In addition, on the roof, there's solar panels and air source heat pumps to help ensure that the building is energy efficient. So that's the plan with the red line on it, and effectively it includes the immediate area around the building, and extends into the grassed area that goes up to the junction of Shutton and Upper High Street.
Gareth's my apologies. Struggle here on top of the fan. So to get closer.
Okay.
Sorry, they don't want you to turn the fan off either.
No, I totally understand that. So that's the overhead view of the existing situation, and the land I was referring to effectively is the area in here to the south of the Block C. There you can see the trees that exist on there at the moment, and those have been TPO'd. One is in poor condition and is coming out, which is the central one to the south, and there's also one yew and one laurel. So that's the existing floor, existing basement layout. And proposed, you've had the 10 parking spaces running along that left-hand side of that drawing, and then shaded in green the cycle storage for the site. That's the existing ground floor layout, and proposed effectively you'll have a reception area going through the existing doors to the south, 10 studio apartments, and then on the right hand side you can see the stair tower, and there's also bin store and substation to the right hand side there. That's the existing first floor, proposed first and second floor plan. They're both the same, which again, the studio apartments in blue and the one bed units are in yellow. And then moving up through the building, the third to the fifth floor, again, same configuration in terms of the blue relating to the studio apartments and the yellow one bed. And then the two upper floors, effectively, you have the 2-bed units and the 1-bed units and a lesser number of the studio apartments. So overall, you've got 111. That's the roof plan, which effectively shows the layout for the solar panels and the enclosure for the heat pumps. That's obviously the existing elevation to the north. So effectively the cut through there to the bottom is the link between blocks B and C. That is effectively the proposed altered elevation, which, as you can see, got a significantly number of reduced windows in it, and the stair tower on the left hand side, and new cladding. There is a specific condition in relation to the cladding in relation to the final colour scheme. Sure, it's a sort of matte colour to reduce some reflection. That's the existing west elevation and proposed west elevation. So far lesser, almost all the windows on the upper floors come out, and similarly you have the east as existing and then as proposed. So you've got the central new stair tower there in brick and the single story bin store and substation, which effectively is partly sunk into the ground on the right hand side as you effectively go into the car park entrance. Let's see the south elevation, existing and proposed. That's the root protection area in relation to the trees adjacent to both the bin store and the stair tower. The tree officer is happy with the protection proposed and has recommended a condition in relation to an arboricultural statement as part of the ongoing works. And those are the trees then to the south, which will be supplemented, and there's a specific condition in relation to landscaping to cover that. So just going around the site, that's a view obviously looking from the entrance point into the car park to the ramp down. The existing servicing area effectively for bins is off to immediately to the in front of you as you come into it, and the proposed site for bin storage then will be effectively where that bush and the skip is, so it's going to be dug into the site at that point. And that's the view looking across the road from the other side of the crescent. Then moving around the site, that's a view looking up towards from the Masonic Hall area, looking back towards the site. And then that's roughly from the corner looking towards southern elevation, then moving round site. So the impact of the site, clearly it's going to have a much more intense use than previously. The concerns of the town council are noted, however, it is suitable for a car-free development, given that it's right in the centre of town. It is clearly a sustainable location. There is no significant loss of trees. There will be a travel plan as recommended by the Highway Authority, which again will be subject to the legal agreement. There will be additional planting to satisfy BNG. The main area of concern clearly has been the impact on heritage assets, both in terms of the conservation area of the crescent, which effectively is the other side of the road, and the various listed buildings within that, which are largely grade 2 star. Now, we've carefully looked at alternative arrangements in terms of trying to lessen the impact, but there really is only one place that the stair tower can go, and similarly the bin store is really the most appropriate location, because moving it, there's a height difference effectively between the shut-in and the land in the applicant's ownership adjacent to that road. And clearly it makes far more sense to locate it adjacent to the existing area served off the access point in terms of collection. There is no specific affordable housing proposed as part of the development. That's effectively due through the vacant building credit in relation to the site, although clearly, having said that, the whole aim of the development is to have a number of apartments available to individual people who work in the hospital at low rents, and it's an easy walk from there to the site and back. So in consideration, the principle of development is considered to comply with national and local policy when taken as a whole. It's clearly needed for key worker accommodation. It will reuse a brownfield site and in a sustainable location, and the public benefits of the above are considered to outweigh the harm to the setting of the heritage assets pointed out. And as a result of that, the recommendation is one for approval.
Thank you very much, Gareth, for that. I've got one public speaker on this item, and that's Mr. Richard Baum. Mr. Baum, if you'd like to come up to the front desk, and if you push the right-hand button, the red light will come on, and when you start speaking, your 3 minutes will begin. Okay, thank you, and welcome to the committee, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the proposals for County Hall. I'm Richard, I'm the Head of Strategic Planning at Somerset NHS Foundation Trust, and I've walked here today. It took 12 minutes in the heat to walk to County Hall from Musgrove Park Hospital today. I'd like to focus on one central point, if I can, and that is the urgent and growing need that we have for high quality and affordable accommodation for NHS staff, and the direct impact that has on the care that Somerset FT provides to patients. We continue to face sustained workforce pressure. We are actively trying to recruit new staff all the time at Musgrove, whether that's newly qualified staff, experienced staff, or trainees. And one of the issues we currently face is that there isn't enough access to suitable housing. We regularly see individuals accept roles and then struggle to find accommodation that they can afford. And others decline roles altogether because there isn't sufficient housing in the local area, or sufficient housing that they can afford. Now, for NHS staff in particular, it's important because many of the ones that we recruit are early in their careers. They move around geographically a lot. They require accommodation that's flexible and affordable, and the traditional private rental market doesn't provide that. And that's why purpose-built key worker accommodation, like what is being proposed here, is really important. It addresses a clear gap that we have, and it enables staff to live locally and in a way that is affordable to them so that they can remain in their roles, train up in the NHS and keep delivering patient care locally here in Somerset. The proposal will allow individuals to come to our organisation, settle quickly. It'll reduce the pressures that they have commuting. It supports more sustainable modes of travel. And Block C here is ideal and in a highly sustainable location. It also brings a disused building back to life in a key part of the town. So for us, it's not just about the development, it's about delivering accommodation at a scale that will allow us as an organisation to meet the genuinely felt need that we have for staff. Now, we've worked collaboratively with Prime and the council to consider many factors in relation to this development, and they've been gone through in the report that you've just heard. We recognise the importance of delivering high quality design and heritage sensitively. So this isn't just about the building, it's about the NHS workforce sustainability, and ultimately it's about patient care. We know that the demand exists. Without sufficient provision, we're not going to be able to recruit staff long term going forward. So on behalf of Somerset NHS FT, I respectfully ask that you approve this application. Thank you.
Perfectly timed. Anyone think you've been practicing? That's excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Ball. I'm not aware of any other public speakers, so I'm going to start with the councillors that have caught my eye already, and that's Andy Hadley first, please, followed by Nick O'Donnell and then Caro and then Francis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I think it's a great idea. We do need affordable housing, especially for our key workers. And I doubt if any of the key workers would want to drive to the hospital because they've probably got to pay for parking. And we know how expensive it is at Musgrove Park Hospital to park. But bringing it back to parking, we've got 111 units there, some double units with 10 parking spaces. First question is, what is happening with the underground parking area? Is that being used for parking or is that being used for something else? Because I read through it, but I just didn't catch that. And secondly, yes, they won't use their cars to go to work because of the charges and everything else, but most people own a car. What what is being done so that the local area is just not snarled up with 111 cars all day long because they're not taking them to work to park, but causing havoc in the local area.
The council has, in selling the site, has allowed for 10 parking spaces within the basement car park as part of the development, plus the cycle parking that was pointed out in the presentation. It would be expected that, given the proximity to the hospital, that no, people wouldn't have cars.
With respect, I think that's just not possible, is it? We can't expect 110 units not to buy a car. I just can't see that happening.
Okay, I'm going to move on. We'll go to Nick O'Donnell, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I too, I think this is, do commend this proposal. I think it's vital. It's a good project. It makes use of a building that's not being used. So, you know, I think it has a lot of value and a lot of merit in it. My two questions, I mean, obviously the question on the parking. So just to clarify, is that we're talking about, we've got 20 car parking spaces available then. Has it 10 outside and 10 underground? Just 10 underground. Okay, well, yeah, I'm with Councillor Hadley on that one. I don't think that's going to really work. But my questions are two of them. How critical is it that it needs to be 111 flats? And how long do you think the key workers will spend in those flats? I mean, how is it? Are we anticipating a year, 2 years? Is it like short term, long term, medium term? The reason I ask is that when I was looking at the plans, I was quite concerned about the living space, 24 meters squared to possibly 27 meters squared, which, as the report says, is 12 meters per meter squared below what is marketable. Which if you're living at university, if you're a student university, this is probably more than enough room. But then, of course, halls of residence, you've got a separate kitchen space. I just feel 24 meters squared is a bit cramped for people who are going to be living there for kind of medium term. We kind of got to think of their welfare as well here. I was doing a bit of a search, and I was searching the kind of average size rooms on well-known and well-advertised hotels, and they average out at about 21.3 meters squared. So actually these flats aren't that much bigger than an average size hotel room. And I just feel uncomfortable that we're going to asking people to live long term in what is essentially just slightly bigger than a hotel room. So the question was, is 111 flats the key, or can we actually, have we got opportunity here to perhaps have a little think, try and make some of the flats a bit bigger, just for comfort and just being able to proverbially swing your pets around. But yeah, not that I'm sure that not that I'm endorsing swinging any pets around rooms, but it's that metaphor. So that's my question. Is there scope to perhaps re-modify, perhaps meet halfway? You know, if we're losing 12 meters squared from the average studio flat, whether we could move up a bit higher. Thank
you. It was something that was considered, but it is a clear need identified by the NHS Trust.
Stop the sound coming into
the
here.
Numbers effectively had gone up from the original submission to the current application. And that was purely on the basis of the surveys that they carried out in terms of their requirements and their need.
I could just add, and what members would expect me to say is, you've got an application in front of you for 111 units, and that's what you need to consider under this application. I say this has been the subject of very detailed consultation and negotiation with the trust and with the applicants Prime, who have done these sort of schemes elsewhere, and we have raised the point about it being below the sort of the national space standards, but these are shorter term accommodation rather than someone's permanent residence, and on that basis we felt that the quality of accommodation was acceptable in the context of this application.
So can I then go back to my second question, is how long we were expecting key workers to live in these flats?
Perhaps the
Mr. Bond.
Yes, if I'm allowed.
I will permit you to answer the question because we need an answer.
Yes, thank you. I think the turnover is expected to be quite high. So if we look at our on-site accommodation at Musgrove at the moment, the turnover is relatively high, and the types of people who will be using this. So the apartments will be furnished, and that's to accommodate the type of people who might be new to the country or new to the area, who need somewhere to start living in when they come and work here first, and perhaps after a short period of months or whatever, they would look for somewhere to buy or in the private rental sector. But in the short term, they need somewhere to live. So the turnover will be high, and so hopefully that answers that question.
No, and I think this proposal is very good at giving that short term and giving someone a chance to settle here in Taunton, find their feet, find out where they would like to live in Taunton. Just gives them a nice affordable house option so that they can really afford to move here as well. I think it's a good plan, but just focused on the size.
Thank you, Nick. Carol Ellis, please.
Yeah, I think I would echo the view that, it's good to be using a brownfield site of this kind. You've got to be mindful of every single dwelling that is permitted on a brownfield site, and an accessible location of the town centre is one less that has to go on precious green space. So that is playing on my mind. And I think obviously this is serving a really burning social community need, because if Musgrove cannot attract a decent workforce, then we are going to lose out majorly. So this is very much starter, meanwhile, housing to make sure that people who have really, unique barriers to the labour market can just get their feet in and get started. And so I think, overall, I think it's, I can't see why we would be objecting to it. Yes, there are, concerns about parking. I'm assuming some of the nature of the sort of young people who've newly arrived in the country maybe less likely to have cars. I don't know what as mentioned of travel plan. I'd just like a bit more information about the Section 106 and travel planning, just to kind of fill this out a bit for me. And also just to check, I mean, clearly, C block is a minger, isn't it? It's like you wouldn't build that nowadays, would you? You wouldn't, but it's there, and this might make it slightly less minging, mightn't it? Can't get possibly any more minging. Minging should in fact be a term that's used in planning, because I think it's very effective term. So I don't really have an issue from that point of view. I'd just like to understand a bit more about the Section 106 travel plan and how that might help address issues around parking as such. And the other thing, the tower on the eastern, the stair tower. So the conservation officer was saying ideally would have a bit of fenestration. Was there a reason, I can't remember, why it couldn't have fenestration, just to make it a little bit tie in a bit better with the crescent? Is there a reason why it couldn't have that?
Well, I'm pleased Councillor Ellis has picked up on policy MING1 in the core strategy. Good knowledge. Joking aside, one of the things I was also one of the things before I pass to Gareth, one important factor to note, and I don't think we've brought this out yet, is you quite rightly said people coming from other countries may not have access to cars or whatever, but they equally will struggle to get access to traditional housing services because they haven't got roots in the area. And the idea is this is almost like a, awful to call it a halfway house, but it's a starting point, and there's a house manager who that Prime use in their other places, who's basically their role is to try and get people established in the local community and get them access to housing opportunities either in a private sector or market housing or through social housing, dependent on the circumstances. I was just going to pass to Gareth on the stair tower issue and the Section 106 travel plan points, if that's all right, Gareth.
Yeah, the stair tower, the conservation officer had concern over the dominance and the one sort of mass in that it was all going to be of a similar colour. We did look at asking them to put windows in, but then raised problems in terms of energy efficiency and the like. We have got stripes designed into the cladding to actually break up that elevation as part of the scheme. In relation to the 106, in terms of the effectively there's going to be a cascade type approach in terms of occupation from the key worker point of view. So it'll start off with hospital and NHS trust workers. It'll then move down if there's any space to other NHS workers in the area, and then sort of key workers in the community such as firemen, planners. Yeah, general local authority key workers in terms of the cascade approach. Yes, I mean the 106 will control the travel plan. I don't have off the top of my head the precise details of what is envisaged within that.
So through you, Chair, sorry, there is a document that was submitted with the application, which was a draft travel plan. That would need to be finalised and enshrined in the Section 106 agreement. I'm just going through this to look at some of the key points, and if it's okay with you, if you ask for further comments, I can come back with those comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for letting me speak at what is my first planning committee for Somerset Council, though I have sat on planning committees elsewhere. I see the key considerations, absolutely. I see the point of the exercise, absolutely. I am concerned about the parking. I am concerned about, unless it's going to be a term of the tenancy that people can't have cars, there are going to be a lot of cars. Maybe it is. The bin area, the heritage stuff and the bin area, I wholly and totally agree with all the people who think that the bin areas are vile and horrible, and bins are horrible outside any house, and we all have to put up with them. And it's just one of the things we have to put up with. So I'm not worried about that one. I am a bit more worried about the stair block. I'm quite sure it would have been possible to. I appreciate that it's the application we have in front of us. I think it is a great pity that an effort wasn't made to provide some fenestration and deal with the issues of insulation and so on behind the scenes. But I appreciate that we have the application in front of us, despite the fact that the Conservation Officer said he would support the application if that had been done. He just thinks the harm's not too bad at the moment. So it's not a stopper, but I think it's a great pity. There are a couple of things about the size of the spaces. And understand the great need. Understand that the idea is it's to be short term and therefore under the normal regulations is the normal size is thought to be acceptable. I wonder if either in the 106 or a condition, whichever's appropriate, we're going to say how long short term means. The only answer we've had is a high turnover. That doesn't really tell us how long anything's envisaged for. So that's one question I'd like some comment on. And I know that there is to be a cascade for occupancy, but suppose that despite the work that has been done to show the need and that this will address the need that the hospital has, suppose it doesn't work, or suppose, for heaven's sake, the hospital moves to Bridgewater or something. What is going to happen? What's going to be the end of it? Because we are particularly looking here at people from away coming here and needing to find a place. If the cascade widens out, or the hospital, heaven forfend, doesn't need it anymore, we'll be talking about far more local people, and it'll be much more unsuitable. So I think we need to know a bit more about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next on the list is Derek.
Well, I support this. I think we all recognise why the principle is such a good one. I'm not going to repeat what other people have said. In relation to parking, there's a few things need to be said about parking and then the Crescent in broad terms. As far as the parking's concerned,
so damn slow.
I'm sure there will be residents who
Did you slow up here?
Well, it should be next door to the router.
Sorry, somebody's
I can't hear anything.
not muted online.
Sorry, very much.
You need to mute yourself online.
It's
Thank
Paul Rutter who's making a noise.
Mr. Rutter, would you please?
Right.
Thank you.
I'm sure there'll be residents of Shutton, residents of Wilton Street, residents of Compass Hill, who will be worrying if people come here and they do bring cars, even if it's a relatively small proportion who bring cars, are they suddenly going to get parking permits within our zone and start parking there? It's just important to remember that before we get to that, it clearly is right, I would have thought, that people living in this kind of accommodation, coming in the circumstances we anticipate, are less likely to have cars. They are going to be price sensitive occupiers. Frankly, they wouldn't be living in such small accommodation in such circumstances if they weren't. That's not a criticism, that's just a reality. And so I don't think we're going to be overrun with cars. There's then the point that car-free development in urban centres is nothing new. We've only got to think about what's anticipated in relation to flat blocks on Firepool when it happens. I won't say if, when it happens. And of course, it's anticipated there that there will be lots of properties which are hoped to be car-free. This is different from a situation where, for example, if this was being proposed in a vacant building in a residential street, where there's already a residence parking zone in that very street, it will clearly be inappropriate in those circumstances. But here, this isn't within the residence parking zone as such. Now, within the planning process, we can't, as I understand it, and I'm confident, we can't put a condition on saying that nobody living in this property would be able to apply for a permit. But this council, outside of its remit as a planning authority, does control parking. It does control parking zones. And I, for my part, it's just me saying here now that given the intention of this accommodation, I think it probably should be the case in due course that the council takes the view that people in this accommodation shouldn't be able to go and get residence parking permits up in Wilton Street, for example. The capacity isn't there. And I think that goes a long way to alleviating any concern about this issue.
Town centre doesn't have residence parking zone.
Exactly. The town centre itself, even though there are nearby areas, doesn't have a residence parking zone. So I'm less concerned about that, having thought that through. In relation to the Crescent, I see what Historic England say. In my view, the conservation officer takes a slightly more pragmatic and realistic view. It's the conservation officer who points out that probably the biggest harm that was done in terms of setting to the Crescent was done in the 60s. When B and C block were built. And we shouldn't forget the Crescent's been there for over 200. The building we're sitting in has been here for getting on for 100. And then it's about 60 years ago that B and C block came along. If there is some harm, I'm clear in my mind that the harm is less than substantial. I know the word monolithic is used to describe the effect of the stair tower, but actually, if one looks at the end of C block, the rather stark ending that's there at the moment, yes, there are some bands in the brickwork, but there is no fenestration. Frankly, it's pretty monolithic as it is. And given the obvious planning benefits to this, I'm satisfied that the harm is less than substantial.
Of course.
Thank you. Yeah, and just following on from that, and I think that point about less than substantial harm to a heritage asset, going to the MPPF is quite an important one, because where there's less than substantial harm, you need to a heritage asset, you need to weigh that against public benefit. And our view as officers in weighing this up in the overall planning balance and against the heritage balance test is that the public benefits are great. Yes, you know, there are some concerns about adding the stair core, but actually when you look at it in the bigger picture against the heritage asset, the public benefits of the 111 units in a very sustainable location, reutilising existing building fabric rather than creating new buildings, not imposing on the open countryside, as Councillor Ellis has said, we believe that the public benefit test clearly outweighs this less than substantial harm. So I'm grateful to Councillor Perry for pointing out the test.
Okay, Councillor Farber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I start asking my questions, I just like a clarification from Mr. Brown that would any F1, F2 nurses be housed in these accommodations?
It's certainly possible. It depends who applies, but they wouldn't be excluded.
So my question is actually it's not just for those people coming here for a short time and going out. These are potentially 2 years coming here for training. So my main concern is actually parking. Huge concern about parking. I have enormous amount of problem across, you know, Wilton, Sherford and the wider area. And one of the biggest issue is parking. So I need some sort of assurance from you to say that, you know, some of those are being addressed. So if people have got cars, you've got to allocate the car parking for them, because, you know, we are putting enormous amount of pressure on existing households in the area, in the western part of Taunton, by the hospital. So I urge you to have a look at this and come up with some solutions. But having said that, I'm in support of this proposal, which actually supports Musgrove Park Hospital workforce, recruitment and retention. It's essential. It brings a vacant building back into a productive use, which I'm, you know, all for it. It supports the local economy, local people spending money in local areas, the cafe, restaurant. It increases evening activities. That in the town centre supports the public transport usage, improves vitality and the footfall, and on top of that, it reduces pressure on our housing, as my colleagues were actually alluding to. And it has enormous amount of environmental benefits. I think if I remember rightly, one of the trees that are being removed has got TP on it. Am I right, or can I have clarification on that? And if it has, is it going to be replaced by a number of trees likewise? And then I'll follow up.
I can come in on that, Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
We've served a TPO. One of the trees, which is a horse chestnut, was in very poor condition, so we haven't covered that by the TPO, and that will be felled as part of the scheme, but there will be replacement planting as part of the development.
That's good. The scheme, as I understand it, has air source heat pumps, solar panels, improve insulation and recladding. It reuses the existing building rather than the demolition and rebuild. But in this heat, what we need is air conditioning. Is there any way of actually, is that part of, our planning to sort of be able to sort of put that in a play? Because, as the temperature is getting hotter and hotter, then, this is something we can actually look at. Yeah. So basically, potentially we cannot actually dictate that at all. So but given 92 out of 111 units are studio and residents would benefit, I think, potentially from shared lounge spaces, co-working areas, meeting rooms, wellness facilities, or an outside area for people to sit at. I haven't seen any areas that outside that we can actually accommodate for that, because 111 units, you need people to come together at some stage, otherwise they'd be spilled over, and I haven't seen that anywhere here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Norman Campbell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having seen the building go up in the 60s, I thought it a bit of a brutalist design when it went up, but the architects at the time were quite pleased with it. Monolithic it might be, or brutalist it might be. Quite frankly, a change in the eastern front, so to speak, is therefore highly desirable to break it up a bit, but it's going to have to be something fairly large to cope with it. The accommodation, much needed, both for the hospital and for the college, and for the nurses that perhaps training at the college. So I don't think there's ever going to be a lack of customers for a long time with that area at all. Car parking, surely we can put a condition that says car parking will not be provided, or ask that Mr. Brown to have that condition on there, and that it will be out of town parking only, and that will make a business opportunity for somebody. So I'm sure that can be provided and organised, and it's something that, as Taunton is having to think like a city when Firepool's developed, will be used again and again. So I think that's perhaps a condition we could put in there. The question I have is for the red line. The red line draws a line around all the access off of the crescent into the basement. Part of the basement is our emergency bunker, nuclear bunker, call it what you will be, that use that access to store in training times and in perhaps times of use if it should come again. Therefore, is that access available to them? Will it be kept clear in time of need, etc.? And what's our condition to protect the bunker for continued use for the future?
My understanding is we haven't sold effectively the bunker or access to it. The area within the basement effectively is limited in relation to the 10 parking spaces, the cycle storage, and the tanking in relation to fire safety.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, may I come back? So is the access sold to the NHS or not? And if it isn't, why is it in the red line?
It's in the red line because we've given them access to the underground car parking area for their limited use. We haven't sold them the land because obviously clearly we're retaining it for our own use.
The red line Sorry, through you, Chairman, sorry. The red line doesn't necessarily denote ownership, it denotes the planning unit that's been applied for, provided they have a means of access, a right of access, which I can only assume was granted at the same time that land was sold, then that should be fine. But coming back to Councillor Cavill's point about surely we can put a condition on, unfortunately we can't as a planning authority put a condition on limiting people from applying for passes or owning cars. That's without the planning system. However, you know, the NHS Trust are here, that would be within the gift when renting out properties or renting out the units, that would be in the gift of the developer and whoever manages the building. But
no, I'm going to disagree with you. The town centre doesn't have an RPZ. There's no residence parking zone within the town centre. So this block, as I understand it, is inside the town centre in that definition. Therefore, they would not be able to apply for a permit. And if they haven't got a permit, they couldn't park, for example, in Wilton Street, which is part of an RPZ. Yeah. So if you can only apply for a residence parking permit if you live within the residence parking permit zone. As this is not in the zone, it's designated as town centre, which has no RPZ. They couldn't apply for a non-existent residence parking permit. So if they had vehicles, they would have to find somewhere to park them elsewhere, other than in an RPZ with no parking permit. But they don't qualify, they don't live in the zone, so they can't qualify for a permit.
Thank you. I take the point, although I would have to repeat that we wouldn't have been able to condition it anyway. It wouldn't meet the test. So
okay, I've still got people that want to talk on this. So before we go to the second round, we'll finish the first. And so the next person on my list is Andy Sully, please, online. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Just two quick questions on the fenestation question. When we saw the views of the building, one of the ends was taking all the windows out, so it's going to become like a solid mass. Why can't we put in like green walls like they do in London? So if we've got a big area which is a lot of concrete or brick, you can actually bring vegetation into an area, which is good for biodiversity, it's good for the environment. Could we put a condition in to say that on some of these areas we could have green walls? That's my one question. My second question is on the occupancy of the studio apartments. Now, if someone gets offered coming from abroad or from somewhere else in the country, comes to live here, and they take up one of the studio apartments and they've got a partner and some children, it's going to be a bit tight. Is there a restriction that it can only be occupied by one person in these studio apartments, or can you have a family in them? That's my two questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask Mr. Baum if he knows what Prime's letting policies are, but I can't imagine that they would be letting to a family with a studio flat. But I could be wrong.
I must confess, I don't know. But like you, I would be very surprised if that was allowed.
Okay, I'm sure that I appreciate that.
Chair, the reason why I asked, Chair, is because if someone's got some children, then they've got to go to the local school, and I know the local school at Parkfield, is always fully oversubscribed. So you would be causing a pressure to the local education, because there's no education commitment from this development in terms of funding. So if out of the 111 or apartments you had even 50 kids, it could cause a problem. So I think we need to answer. We need an answer to that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
I think he's got.
Well,
it's not a direct answer to the question about whether things will be allowed or not. But what I would say is that the proportion of studios to 1 and 2 bed apartments proposed in the application roughly mirrors what we have at Musgrove Park at the moment on site. And what I can say is the overwhelming majority of people who want on-site accommodation are single people, which is why we've done it in this way. There are very few families who come over.
Yeah, as I thought that was the case, and most of the schools in town, Andy, are oversubscribed. Okay, so I've still got a couple of councillors that wish
Chair,
to
what about
speak.
my first question about the fenestration? Could it be like green walls, Chair?
If you hang on a second, Andy, I'll try and get you an answer.
I think, well, I think all I could say is that's not part of the application that's before us. So it hasn't been proposed and it's not part, hasn't been part of the discussions between the council.
It's not been proposed.
Great shame.
It's not part of this application, Andy. So I'm not seeing that any way that we can do that. Although it's a very useful a useful guide and pointer for other developments that may come along in the future.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on. Stephen Pugsley, please.
Mr. Chairman, like other members around the room, I think I am predisposed to the application. You notice I said that very carefully. No, I did. Yes, and acceptably. However, I'm just mindful of the fact that it is actually Prime as the developer here, who are not the NHS or the government. I'm struggling to see what the terms of the 106 are, because we're making lots of suppositions here about the public benefits outweighing the harms, which is absolutely understandable. But I think I would feel much happier in knowing that those public benefits have been secured if I know exactly what's likely to be in the 106. Because the 106 is what is going to govern so many of the issues that we've been talking about up to now. Now, it might just be that in the tangle of papers, I'm missing out the key components of the 106, but they're not obvious to me from the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the 106 effectively would cover the definitions of key workers who effectively can occupy the building.
And the cascade.
And that would involve a cascade approach to that, yes. And then it would also include the travel plan, which can include things like parking numbers, cycle provision, so on.
Sorry, Chairman. It also includes they've got a four-pronged approach to the travel, encouraging or discouraging car usage, encouraging information. So there'd be basically an information pack travel information pack would be given to all new residents moving in and further residents moving in as people move out, giving them details of bus routes, train timetables, cycling and walking facilities, maps, etc. So it'll be like an information pack, and then other measures in terms of like the trust itself does a cycle loan scheme whereby they'll buy a bike up front and then you can pay it off over 12 months from your salary, those sorts of things, and that will all be earmarked in the travel plan. What's being submitted is a draft travel plan by the applicant, but what needs to be finalised is an agreed travel plan with our highways authority that meets those targets. You know, as we've said, we can't stop people from owning cars. That's not within the gift of planning. But the likelihood is that the majority of people from other prime sites would not necessarily be car owners. And so whilst I understand the concerns, at the risk of wrath, even if this was an application for a private sector market housing scheme, just with not tied to the university, not tied to the NHS trust, it's in a very sustainable location. I think your officers would be saying the national policy thrust is to encourage reuse of existing buildings and to reduce reliance on the private car. And so, you know, I've worked in authorities where zero parking was the norm. So I've worked for Brighton Council, where that was the absolute norm.
to be honest, I'm slightly less worried about the transport issues because in many respects I think they'll be self-regulating. I am though more concerned about the cascading, the fact that it is going to be secured for the type of accommodation that we're being told that it's going to be for. I've got no doubt about that. I'm very sympathetic towards it, but it is essentially, I think, a private developer that is developing this. One doesn't know what's going to happen in, as Councillor Cavill rightly said, he can remember this being built. I don't want to be in the position in 30 or 40 years' time, at the age of 103, of sitting there saying, gosh, if only we'd been clear about the conditions. And so this very upmarket suite of very expensive housing wasn't allowed to slip through because we hadn't got the conditions right. So that's why I'm just concerned about the 106. I am a trusting sort of person, as you know, Mr. Chairman, and I am willing to go with it. But I do think that it would have been helpful if this afternoon we had been given the opportunity to see a little more clearly what the 106 is likely to contain.
Well, just to, I mean, the section 106 will need to bottom all of those matters out in detail, but the documentation submitted with the application, so document from Prime, who've done this elsewhere, as I say, are looking at this essential local workers, and they've included a definition, and their starting point in terms of their cascade. The cascade for allocation of dwellings is firstly employees of Somerset NHS Foundation Trust, secondly an employee of another health body, e.g. NHS Somerset, ICB, ICS, I'm not sure what the ICS is, but or GP practices, and then the third cascade would be to other public organisations, so that could be the police, fire and rescue service, or indeed council workers. So they've thought about that, but it does need to be bottomed out absolutely through the legal.
So to that degree then, Mr. Chairman, I'm not quite sure if it's clear from the conditions, but I think it does need to be subject to the terms of the 106 being agreed. Well, I mean, obviously it would be, because as you say, it's conditional approval, and if it's it will be conditional on the 106, but it would have been helpful to maybe to have had a clearer understanding of what the 106 is going to contain.
I think that's a very fair point. I think it's a very fair point. Okay, the next person on my list is Dave Mansell. Dave, before you start, you arrived late for the meeting, so whilst I'm happy to hear your comments as ever, I'm afraid you won't be able to vote on this particular item. Okay.
That's fine, and had been understood already. Thank you very much. So that's fine. Yeah, and for that reason, I decided just one matter I would like to comment on, and I will resist commenting on the others, although slightly tempted to. But good points have been made. Let's say no more than that. The matter did concern me, and only a little bit, but nevertheless I hope can be tidied up. And I think, though I think there's a slight similarity to the section 106. I was quickly trying to see if the section 106 was returned to in the conditions. I haven't found it. That's not yet to say I haven't looked carefully enough yet. But I had a similar point in regard to the energy aspects. There's a sustainability and energy plan, or something very close to that, submitted with the application. I feel that should be listed in the documents, part of the approved plans. Now, perhaps I can't suggest that as I can't vote on it, but if not, maybe one of the others can. But that's the point.
Your comments are valid as ever, David, and you know, they're welcome. I'm going to ask the officers about where that sits in the 106 package.
It doesn't sit specifically within the 106 package even, yes. But it certainly could be added to the list of approved details.
I'm happy for that to happen. Okay, Dave, that can be added to it, and obviously the whole 106 it's all subject to the agreement of the 106, and that will be part and parcel of the 106. Okay, that was the first round, ladies and gentlemen. Do any of you want to come back for a second bite? Derek?
Let's ask so that it's clear. In relation to the 106, then, who is, I know that it's suggested that agreement of detail, final detail, or I think there's a reference to minor detail being agreed between officers and chair and vice chair as usual, but the substance of the 106, there isn't a draft yet. There are some suggestions already, but how is it going to be officers dealing with the 106 and then come to us for final approval and minor detail? It's fine if it is, it's got to be clear.
On page 19, Mr. Chairman, it tells you what it's going to be on the recommendation.
Okay,
doesn't it?
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. No, but I think again, you know, coming back to the point, it says that delegated to the head of planning in consultation with the chair or vice chair of the planning committee, where appropriate to agree minor variations to the head of terms and final drafting of the section 106. But that's the bit that we're not privy to this afternoon, is what, you know, the 106.
Just to point out, there's two sets of recommendations in this report. That's what confused me. There's recommendations on, as just been pointed out, on page 19. And then if you go down to the conditions bit, which I was looking at, which has got recommendations above it, which refer to the conditions, there's two sets of recommendations. And I think, I expect we're being asked to approve both, but you've just realised that that's caused certainly me some confusion. Yeah.
Yep, page 33 is the other.
Oh, okay, 33 is the page number.
So if I may, Chairman, the recommendation on page 33 under 14.1 just reiterates, without all of the additional bump about the delegation, the same thing: a legal agreement under section 106 plus the conditions that have been listed. I take the point, actually maybe need to have dropped one, and we'll pick that up for next time. Thank you. Yeah, me too.
See how the confusion arose. Okay. Right. Colleagues, you want to come back? Please do.
Just a quickie, if I may. With the sort of storage, bike storage, I haven't seen anything referring to e-bike storage and charging. Is it worth actually putting that in there?
I've no idea if there's any. Gareth, do you know?
Yes, that's my fault. I should have mentioned that during the presentation. There is a section at the back of the bin store, which is allocated for e-bikes, because they couldn't put it in the basement for fire safety reasons.
Okay, colleagues, anybody else want to come back on anything before we move on?
Propose approval, because nobody has.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bearing in mind the temperature, we're going to do a hydration break. So 10 minutes, please. We can reconvene in 10. That would be lovely. Thank you. Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Are we all present? Okay. Josh, are we live? We're live. Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the June Planning Committee at West. Sorry. I don't know. I believe it might be Mr. Maynard, who's one of the speakers. But I'm not quite sure. Okay. So we'll continue with the second item on our agenda this week. I'd like one meeting if at all possible. Thank you, gentlemen. So it's application 3/39/25/017, and it's in Willerton, and it's the formation of a shared pedestrian and cycle footpath with associated drainage design, warning signage, means of enclosure and access over for the continuation of farming. And the case officer is Gemma Webster. Gemma, we'd love to hear your report. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This application is for a 4-metre wide shared pedestrian.
Do you want to share it on the?
Is it not sharing?
No. Sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
We're not sharing it. Yeah.
Technical hit. There we go. Share.
Share it.
There we go. Is it that one? That one?
It's not even
young. Oh, yeah.
Okay. It was showing you yet.
Just need to go. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, Chair. Right, there we are now.
No problem.
Oh,
It's,
goodness sake.
There we go. So this application is for a 4-metre wide shared pedestrian and cycle path across 2 distinct parcels that will connect 5 Bells on North Road to Doniford Road in Willerton, which will form part of the Steam Coast Trail. This application is coming before Planning Committee due to concerns raised by the Parish Council. As part of the outline planning permission for the erection of up to 350 dwellings and up to 1,000 square metres of use class E employment space in Willerton, the Section 106 agreement mandates the submission of a full planning application for the Steam Coast Trail Works. The Steam Coast Trail Works are defined in the Section 106 agreement as the provision of a 4-metre wide metal cycle path extending approximately 1,500 metres in length from 5 Bells in the west to Donovan Road in the east, as per the proposed pedestrian cycle connections towards Watchet plan. These proposals are in accordance with, and the route matches the Steam Coast Trail Works definition as set out in the Section 106 agreement linked to the outline permission. These works are therefore required as part of the approved development and are linked to the delivery of the dwellings within the outline permission. Therefore, the principle of development for these works has already been established through the outline and Section 106 details. The site area is 2.23 hectares and is located to the north of Willerton. The application site connects to the easternmost extent of the built-up area of Watchet. The site is split across 2 distinct parcels. The first, the western area, is located to the north of St. Peter's Church of England First School, and the second, the eastern area, is located to the east of Donovan Road. Both parcels comprise of existing agricultural land and include hedgerows interspersed with trees. A small stream, the Monk Silver Stream, is located within the western parcel of the site. The larger Donovan Stream is located approximately 280 metres east of the site. The gradient of the path is generally level, taking account of a level change of 10 metres across the length of the proposed path. There are existing hedgerows and trees along the route which are to be retained. A grass verge is proposed either side of the proposed cycle path along its entirety. There will be associated drainage along the track, warning signage, means of enclosure and access to agricultural land to provide continuation of farming activities. 2 temporary construction compounds will be provided for the works. Following completion of the works, these compounds will be removed and the land returned to agricultural use. These pictures show the access for the start of the proposed track on the western end coming off North Road B3191. The route along this first part aligns with the main with the footpath. The second picture shows North Road heading south into Willerton. These photographs are looking north from the access point and also across the apologies. Something's going wrong with my. It's not linking to it.
What's going wrong? Hello? Hello?
Apologies, chairs. Appeared I got kicked out of Teams again. So I'll just run back through. Did anyone see the photographs on there? So I go back. So so this slide is for the proposed start of the proposed track on the western end coming off North Road. And it lines with in the main with the footpath. The second picture shows North Road heading south into Willerton. These photographs are looking north from the access point and also across the agricultural fields to the north. The site runs between the two hedgerows. Concerns were raised in regards to access for landholders and farming machinery from this western access point. In response to these concerns, the proposed removable bollards have been relocated further along the track to ensure that all agricultural vehicles would be able to fully pull off the highway prior to removing the bollards to be access to the fields. In addition, there will be no wooden post and rail fencing along the northern boundary of the track in this area to ensure that access to the fields remains as existing and unencumbered by the proposal. All existing field access would remain. These photographs show the exit point for the western part of the cycle path where it joins onto Dunniford Road and shows the route where cyclists can choose to go through the housing estate or along the road. There is a 43-metre junction visibility at this exit. On the agreed Section 106 plan, there is a section between the two cycle path crossings that cyclists will need to use Dunniford Road for approximately 230 metres. This section of road is largely a straight piece of road with good visibility in all directions, and path is within the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. There is a short section of approximately 140 metres on the northern end that is a national speed limit. However, the character of the road is such that the driver would moderate their speed accordingly and are unlikely to be travelling at high speeds. It is therefore considered that the users of the development as a whole, the small section of road crossing would be a significant reduction in risk than if they had to use the whole of Dunniford Road for travelling. This photograph shows one entry point to the eastern part of the eastern parcel off Dunniford Road, where the cycle path will run along the hedge line following the road with one exit point opposite Casino Road and a further exit point at the start of the cycle path further to the northeast before the railway bridge. The most northerly point of the eastern parcel is where the proposed cycle path connects to Dunniford Road, and that's where the cycle path starts and ends. Further discussions have taken place with the agents since the committee report was published, and it's been identified that a hedge line between the eastern part of the proposal and the Alamede housing estate adjacent is owned by the applicant. Therefore, there is now the opportunity to link the existing cycle path on the Alamede estate through to the eastern part of the Steam Coast Trail. Whilst the Alamede section would not be of adoptable standards as part of the Steam Coast Trail, it would offer a choice for users of the path to use the cycleway through the housing estate or continue up Dunniford Road and rejoin the Steam Coast Trail. It would also provide further benefits for the existing residents of the Alamede to utilise the cycleway without needing to go onto the road. The hedgerow there is just circled in red, and the red line is the existing footpath cycleway that goes through the housing estate currently. This is the wording proposed to secure the connection through the hedge line. It is an additional condition that we are suggesting to be added to the committee report and to the decision. It will require further details to be provided of the connection prior to first use of the eastern section of the proposal. The Public Rights of Way team have stated that a proposed shared and pedestrian cycle path does not coincide with the legal route of footpath WL 2819, and therefore, to avoid having two separate routes in future, the applicant will need to apply for the local authority for a diversion order to formally divert the path. It is only a small part, the western part of the overall route, that will need to be diverted, as can be seen by the yellow highlighted area on the map. This map shows the current footpath running just to the north of the proposed route, which follows the edge of the field margin. Any diversion order will need to be in place prior to works commencing on the site. Therefore, a Grampian style condition has been included requiring the diversion order to link the new path and the existing footpath. It is not considered that there will be any adverse impacts upon the existing rights of way following the works, and the proposal would provide further public benefits by incorporating a cycleway along the route. Reviewing the key considerations. As stated earlier, these proposals are in accordance with, and the route matches, the Steam Coast Trail Works definition as set out in the Section 106 agreement linked to the outline permission. These works are therefore required as part of the approved development and are linked to the delivery of the dwellings within the outline permission. There have been no objections raised by the technical consultees, and there were 3 public comments received to the original consultation and 2 further comments received in support, with the additional consultation following the amended plans seeking to overcome the concerns raised previously. The Parish Council provides support for a new cycleway link. However, they raise concerns in regards to the lack of connection between the 2 parts along Doniford Road and feel there should be a connection through the Alameda site. The addition of the condition to secure the connection prior to the first use of the eastern section of the trail should now address this lack of connection. Their further concerns regarding the location of the bollards and the access to the fields for machinery should now be addressed through the amended plans. There are no objections from highways. The amended plans moving the bollards further in from the track has overcome highway safety concerns for vehicles stopping on the North Road to access the field. The proposal is considered to comply with policy and the Section 106 requirements set out in the outline permission. The proposals will provide community benefit and increase highway safety for those travelling by cycle. Officer recommendation remains as detailed within the committee report to grant conditional planning permission with the subject of the inclusion of the additional condition to secure the connection through the hedge line to Alameda Estate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Thank you for that report. I'm very pleased to see the additional work going on that has created this, I think, a much better idea. I've got a number of public speakers, and the first public speaker is Mr. Dave Maynard. Maynard. Mr. Maynard, good afternoon to you, sir. When you start speaking, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for letting me speak here.
Oh,
yeah.
Can I get just ask you to pause a moment? I'm struggling to hear that. Can we increase the volume?
I can get nearer the phone if that's any help. Can you hear me now?
No, you're very faint. Can you get closer to the microphone, sir?
Yeah, I'm using I'm using my phone microphone here. Can you hear me now? Can you hear okay?
You're using the phone microphone. It might help if you could hold the phone to your face and speak into it.
Yeah, I've got it here. Can you hear me all right?
Getting better slowly.
Yeah, okay, I'll shout. Yeah, it's to do with the cycle track that we're talking about going from Williton to Doniford, and the gap, the lack of continuity between the two, where it passes through the Gore Orchard estate. And so you could actually refer to that as the problem, because it's a bit of a paradox to think that there's a lot of work going on to bring out a lovely cycle track for pedestrians, etc., and then just have a gap in it. And so people wouldn't forgive themselves if within the next 10 years someone got killed on that stretch of road, because the bit of additional effort required to make it continuous was not taken up. So that could be called the problem. The solution, I'm only a lay person, but from my observations, there is a solution. The drawings have already been shown, showing where the gap is, but I did actually do a sketch based on. I'm sorry, it looks a bit like an accident in a sellotape factory, but these are council drawings, and it shows the cycle route coming along here alongside the road, and then the gap where any users are forced onto that road, albeit, as somebody said, straight and non-dangerous because drivers don't drive fast. Well, who knows that's a fact? Probably isn't. So that gap is the problem, and the solution is this, where that point there is that point there. So instead of being forced on the road, yes, you go through the estate where you're abruptly stopped by a hedge, which could be removed, then you're on open land. And I don't know the ins and outs of acquiring land, but you could just continue up there, back up to here, and the problem is sorted. So that's all from my observations as a layperson. I'm not a councillor, don't work for the council. It's just my observations, and it just seems a good thing to do when you consider the amount of young families and children that are on the Gore Orchard estate, and also the same when the new estate gets built. So you literally get scores of families travelling up that gap on the road and subjecting themselves to danger. So that's my contribution. So not high tech, but still a contribution.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I'm going to bring my planning officer back in at this point.
Okay.
Gemma?
Thank you, Chair.
I hope you heard me all right.
Thank you for that point. And just refer you back to my presentation and the further discussions I had with the agent. We've overcome that concern now, and we'll be opening up through the hedgerow and connecting those two parts. And that's what this additional condition that I put up on the
Oh, that's great news.
That's what will respond to that. Okay, so we will be linking those cycleways up together.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
The second person on my list is Robert Dibble. Mr. Dibble, if you'd like to come forward, sir, and come to the speaker. Come to the seat. Push the right-hand button. The red light comes on, and your 3 minutes begin when you start speaking. Welcome to the committee, sir.
Right-hand one. Okay. Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. Some of what I'm going to talk about is going to be preemptive because I haven't seen those plans in full until now. But I am largely referring to the western part of it, which is land that I'm basically farming. What I've written down, what I pre-prepared was, whilst not opposing the shared cycleway in principle, the planning application does say for the continuation of farming. And as I see it at the moment, as it may do some of the opposite. Some of the modifications I understand have been made with regards to the bollards, which was one of my primary objections, as was Mr. Hill, who's got the land next to me, which I understand now has been resolved and taken off the road because that would have been particularly dangerous. But taking such a large area to build it on the first field, which has got nothing to do with the site, in such a small field, you're going to effectively take that field out for the minimum of a year. You're now saying you only want it for construction purposes. But I mean, I don't know what time of the year they intend to do it. Bearing in mind it's arable crops, they only go in once a year. You can't just stick them in any time of the year. The second main concern is with the access. The field further down the track is severely restricted already, as is the same Paul Hill's field. Any further restrictions would make combine access impossible. Therefore, our production would have to stop. The combine is already larger than the gateway. So even a small post in the gate, you wouldn't get in. I get in there now by climbing the hedge with one wheel and pushing it over a ditch the other. So any form of fencing, although I understand now that one side isn't going to be fenced. But I mean, and that's today's combines. They're not going to get smaller. They're, in my experience, they're only getting bigger, and they have done throughout my life. Also, my second field further down, you've gone across the dog leg. There always was the existing coast path there, which has worked fine, which was 6 metres wide, more than adequate for a combined cycleway. You've now got a slither of land between the cycleway and the water. I don't know who's going to be expected to maintain that. I don't know, it's something that's not put in. The Doniford Road end as well, as I understood it with the original plans, I was losing 3 gateways. You're now saying all the existing gateways are to be reinstated? Because 2 of those gateways are essential. If they're taken out and I end up having to use a new gateway at the far end, i.e. the same entrance and access as the cycleway, then you're being forced to take large farm machinery down the Doniford Road, which with the size of the machinery is effectively one-way traffic only because cars can't pass you anyway. So the replacement gateways being offered would mean taking away large machinery. So there is already a footpath on this site. Part of it, as has been pointed out, is part of the coast path. It's worked for as long as I can remember, and you can see that's quite a long time. Therefore, I hope a bit more thought can be given with it. So at least the proposal does what it says on the tin: shared cycleway for the continuation of farming. When you bear in mind that farming is food security. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Did you want to come back at this point, Gavin? Okay. Then we'll move on. Is it still Mr. Rutter?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe it or not.
Mr. Rutter, I believe you're online, joining us online. My apologies.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. Can you?
Good afternoon to you, sir.
You can hear me?
Yes,
yeah.
we can.
Thank you. I'm the councillor for Willerton, and Liz Peaks can't actually be here today, so she's asked me to reflect some of her comments and thoughts. You've already mentioned the amendment to the route, which makes much more sense. What I have some concerns about, although in principle we do want to see better active cycling and walking, so this sort of corridor is welcome. It's the detail of the building of it. I was actually involved with the development of runway 2 in Manchester Airport. I was representing the National Trust, and we put a cycleway across landscape, which was not 4 meters wide, as was recommended. It was a lot narrower. It had very little curbing and natural runoff areas. Not only is it more aesthetically pleasing, it's also seemingly appropriate for a rural environment. And that has been working for 10 years. So I'd really like someone to reconsider the width, because I don't think 4 meters really is accepted as a appropriate development. The other thing is, as an ecologist, I'm extremely concerned about the loss of hedgerows. We have a nature recovery strategy in Somerset. Hedgerows are vital for connectivity. And the understated facts within the ecology survey doesn't highlight the county of important sites called Outmore Wood, where there are at least 3 European protected species, including dormice and bats. They all need, and we're going to lose these if these gaps are too large in the hedgerow. So we'd like to see a hedge planted along the full length of the new cycleway, and with verge, which we hope will be managed as a wildflower meadow. So a number of people have highlighted the concerns about safety of putting these cycles on a road, and I'm very pleased to hear that an alternative route has been thought. But I really would like, I think Councillor Peaks agrees that it has been a rather rushed affair, and we need to perhaps have a site visit with local community and really get to the bottom of making something that fits for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rutter. Kevin, did you want to come back on anything? No? Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to the applicant's agent, Mr. Matt Tucker. Mr. Tucker, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Matt Tucker, a director in the South West Planning Team at Southwest. planning agent for this application, I speak in favour of the proposed developments for a shared pedestrian cycle footpath to connect 5 Bells and North Road through to Doniford Road. By way of background to this application, the outline planning permission was granted for a residential-led scheme for 350 units at west of Willerton to the southwest of this site. As mandated as part of that permission and as confirmed by officers in their presentation, it requires the delivery of a 1,500 metre cycleway in the precise location prescribed on the plans shown in the presentation. As part of the submission of the application, the applicant has worked with the tenant farmer and officers and stakeholders, tenant farmers plural, to come up with solutions that will work better for the continuation of farming. They include the removal of the barriers from adjacent to the highway set back into the site to enable vehicles, combine harvesters, etc., to pull off the highway and to basically undertake the same movement into their fields as they currently do. The width of the cycleway has been prescribed again as a 4 metre cycleway that's metalled trunk road, so tarmac finished top. Again, we've followed that as a general process. Through working closely with officers again as a part of an amendment to the submission, we've also agreed a condition that will enable the connection through to the Alamead development, which I think we all can agree is a suitable and sensible solution to trying to avoid and limit the amount of time cyclists or pedestrians may need to use Doniford Road. So again, a significant benefit to the scheme that goes beyond what was consented as part of the detailed plan in the Section 106 attached to the West of Willerton permission. There are 2 compound areas that again are set aside for delivery of the development. The timings of how long those fields need to be out of arable use is yet to be determined, but of course will be so if planning permission is granted and a contractor is appointed to deliver the development. With respect to hedgerow, there is a linear element of the development alongside the existing brook that is required to achieve 10% BNG benefits over and above the existing water and riparian environment. So enhancements to biodiversity will be given as part of this scheme. So I think this is a highly unusual application before officers to deliver a really significant piece of infrastructure that will be for the benefit of residents and visitors alike, that will give an alternative route in between Watchet and Willerton that is generally level rather than the existing connection that's there. And I would implore members, as per the recommendation of officers, to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors. Okay, I'll start with Derek and work round. So Derek.
It's great that it's been improved. I think probably all agree it's devil in the detail, isn't it? And the question really is whether the detail is good enough now. Can I just check? We had the last public speaker talk about the engagement with the farmers, and the implication is that what's been done has the approval of farmers, but yet we've heard a farmer still concerned about the access. Our addressed officers, I suppose, are we satisfied now that in fact what's been proposed is genuinely sufficient to enable the continuation of farming as per Mr. Dibble's concerns?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, all the access to each of the individual plots of land along there and the gateways will remain as they are now. The bollards will be moved back. There's the post and rail fencing, which is also now being moved further to the east to ensure that all land can be accessed directly as they are now.
Obviously, the really big good news here is the opening up of the option to go through the Alamead estate by opening up that hedge at the end. Just so we're clear, that still won't be adopted. The reason that won't be adopted is because it's not 4 meters wide.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's I think it's about 3 meters wide, so it's not of adoptable standard for the Steam Coast Trail.
You say it's not adopted as part of the Steam Coast Trail. Can I just check? Is it proposed that is the Alamead estate generally adopted or going to be adopted at some point? We know.
I did have a look at the application and the decisions and everything with that. that estate, the highways and the roadworks are adopted, but it doesn't appear to be the cycleway, the footpaths are adopted.
Well, I just say here, it's not for us today, but it seems to me that although this is obviously a huge advancement, the one slight concern I'd have is that we've got a metal path on the western section, metal path eastern section, but that bit on the Alameda estate, unless somebody knows better, from what I can see on Google Street View, best I can work out, it's gravel, I think. You can see how people might think, oh, do you know what, I'm just going to nip down the road. In the long term, it would be nice if somebody somehow could look at tarmac in that bit, so it's effectively as good. And even if you've got a narrow tired bike, you can go all the way through. But generally, very happy.
Thank you, Derek. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to, if I can, ask one question, and it might come from the fact that I can't quite match up the schematic on the plan with what's on Google Map. But I'd just quite like to ask, I was a bit disappointed that we're building a cycle path, active cycle path, that now runs right past a secondary school, and there seems to be no access or diversion from the cycle path into the school, which I thought would have made quite a nice sense. And you're probably going to say it's probably too late to change, but it seems a shame that it seems an opportunity to have missed there, because we've actually put a cycle path from Alameda now to Danesfield School, which is probably a very good route for students from there. Yet they have to go onto North Road and then down North Road. But it might be because I'm misreading the schematic as to where the cycle path is. But it seems an opportunity missed there, that we weren't able to divert straight into a secondary school and enable people to have a safer route to school, which is, I think Mr. Rutter was saying, was one of the aims of this cycle path, active travelling and safe travelling.
Yeah, there is no direct link into, is this the school off North Road? Yeah. So because I think you'd have to go across the stream and through that way. So yeah, so the path is to the north of the stream and the school's to the south. So I can't. This application came in and it's part of the section 106. So whether it was considered when the section 106 was drawn up back then, but yeah, it wasn't ever included on the section 106 route. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm particularly, one of the things I'd written down is there any way we can enable people to use that bit that isn't wide enough? And you've done it, and that's fantastic. So that, and yes, active travel, yes, safe routes, and so on and so forth. I'm a little bit, no, let's just finish the other bit off, the new bit, the connecting bit. It would be a good thing, and I don't know whether it's anywhere within this committee's remit, if that connecting bit could be, there could be an application from whoever for that to be adopted as a right of way rather than as a permissive path, if it is at the moment a permissive path, because a permissive path can always be withdrawn.
Are you talking about the 3 metre wide one through the estate? Yeah. So that's under different land ownerships now. So unfortunately, that would be outside of our remit to be able to.
The local authority possibly in another guise could bring forward an application, and maybe should. And maybe that would be a not a planning thing, but absolutely, because it's terribly, that very good thing that you've achieved is entirely vulnerable to the landowner withdrawing their permission. And that feels very twitchy from me. It means that the security of that good thing is simply not there. But I appreciate it's not something that this committee can deal with. There are two things that I want to ask about. And the first one, I've heard what our two public speakers have said about farming and about access to land, and I'm glad that the gateways are going to be available and made possible to use in a safe way. However, I wonder if there is room for anything in terms of our conditions that considers the timing of works, because the impact on farming, temporary impact on farming of the two compounds could be greater or lesser depending on the time of year when works are done. And I just wonder whether there's anything there. So that's one question. The second one is, I'm sorry, I probably have been finding it difficult, as others have, to cotton on to exactly the layout of the existing footpath and the new one, having not seen the site. But on page 56, the report says that a Grampian style condition will be applied to the permission, requiring the diversion order to link the new path and the existing footpath. Works cannot take place for any approval of this proposal until the diversion order application has been approved. There is then on page 61 the condition, which doesn't say that. The condition says that merely that nothing could be done until an application is made. So I think we need to get those two in line. I'd be really worried about going with the first one for, again, things that are outside this committee's remit, which is that I believe there is quite a backlog in dealing with applications around rights of way, and if it was a Grampian condition, that might put this off for, I think, some years. So I'd be a bit worried about that. The other thing is, well, and a couple of other things. One, I don't think you can actually divert a path until the new one has been physically made. It wouldn't work. So I would be worried about that. And it all feels a bit complicated, because I think there are places where works are going to have to happen across the current path, but the applicant is being told they can't do anything to interfere with that. It will interfere with it. I can't see how that can be that can be avoided. I also do think, what has highway safety got to do with it as a reason for the condition? I think it's much more about actually giving people access. But again, I'd like some comment on that. And the other thing is, I'm not sure I see the point of making a condition that an application's got to be made or that it's got to be approved, because the only people who might be disadvantaged by having two paths close together, either the landowner or the chap who has to farm it. Given that, why on earth do we need to make a condition when it's something they're probably going to want to do anyways for their own self-preservation? End of my questions.
Yes, certainly, Chair. On your last point there, was that in regards to the footpath diversion order? Yes, sorry. Yeah, so on condition, I think it was condition 12 with the footpath diversion order, I think it's been slightly worded in that form. So because there's two elements of the path, so you've got your western and your eastern. So it means that it's not stopping the entire construction. Like you said, some of it will, like, you don't want to hold it up, you need to be getting on and developing it. And I know when I spoke to the Public Rights of Way officer and Highways, they're being communication, and they realise how important it is to deliver this path. So I don't think there'll be such a delay in that, and they can't see any concerns necessarily, because they said, actually, if you go to the field, a lot of people follow the line of the field anyway, and not actually the footpath that goes across. So hopefully there won't be too much delay there with the diversion order, but it is a requirement to move that line, the official line, so that we don't have a separate footpath and the cycleway following two different ways. To be honest, yeah.
So why do we need a condition? Given that it's, they don't mind having two rights of way. Those businesses why is it our business to worry about?
I think it's also because the footpath does follow along with the cycle path, so that you would need to align it. It's only one tiny section of it that is different. So it's the footpath in its entirety that they want to ensure that they align.
I think, Chairman, I'd have to be honest, we don't have the public rights of way officer with us. That would be a matter that they would consider under an application. So I wouldn't want to give an answer that is not consistent.
That it worries me that we might be setting out conditions that simply don't work. That's one thing. Now, thank you very much for your answers on that. Timing of the setting up of the works compounds and making sure that works in with the agricultural year.
So just looking at condition 12 there, it does say that it can't take place until the diversion order has been applied for rather than approved. So it does allow that flexibility.
The report on page 56 is not accurate.
No, so apologies for that. I think it would originally it was going for that, and then I think we've amended the condition further down the line to allow that flexibility. So apologies for that.
Thank you very much, but I still maintain the position that it's an unnecessary condition. But the other question I asked was about timing and the fitting this around the agricultural year for the use of land for compounds.
We've got a SEMP condition, so on the construction details and everything, so we could probably tie it in with the construction condition that comes in. I think that was condition 6.
Thank you very much.
I do think, Francis, that we may well benefit from talking to the public rights of way officer. Okay. Any other colleagues want to discuss anything on this or ask questions? Okay, in that case, we'll move to the recommendation. I'm happy to propose it from the chair. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Nick. Can I see those in favour, please? That's unanimous. It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Right, we move on to Zach's favourite part of the month, which is the appeals. So,
thank you, Chairman. So yeah, we've got 3 appeal decisions plus a cost decision this month to talk about, all of which were dismissed. So good, that's what Simon likes to see.
I do like to see them. I do like to see them.
The first of these was related to 39 East Street in Taunton. It was conversion of a building into 4 flats. Presently, there are 2 at 39 East Street. This appeal was dismissed ostensibly purely on phosphates grounds because they hadn't effectively demonstrated that there wouldn't be harm to the integrity of the Ramsar site, the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar site. And as members will probably be aware that Ramsar sites have now been given the status that they didn't have under the previous legislation. So Ramsar sites are now protected in the same way as European sites through the new legislation. The inspector felt that the applicant hadn't demonstrated that suitable mitigations would be implemented to ensure a phosphate neutral scheme. They did consider whether this could be dealt with a Grampian style planning condition, saying no development until this has been sorted. But the inspector noted that there was no specific suggested wording for such a condition, and the inspector could not establish that such a condition would be sufficiently precise and relevant or that would be effective to ensure the scheme would be phosphate neutral in both the short and long term. So without that, the inspector felt there was insufficient information to demonstrate the development would not harm the Ramsar site, the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar site, and thereby it would be contrary to the adopted policies of the core strategy and the development plan document. It's interesting, the inspector did also point out that there were a lot of discrepancies between the plans that had been submitted and what the inspector saw on site. And I think that's a lesson to us as officers as well, in terms of when we undertake our site visits, to pick those up. Disappointing that we hadn't, but nonetheless a message I'll be passing back to officers, because the inspector felt that in any normal case, we should make sure the drawings tie up with what's there, but especially so in terms of a listed building. So that's a lesson to pass on to the team, which I will do. The inspector did give weight to the fact that we're not able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, but normally we talk to you about whether or not the harmful impacts significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. In this instance, there is a situation where the application of policies in the framework that protect areas or assets of particular importance provides a strong reason for refusing development proposed. So the tilted balance, that we refer to, the presumption in favour of sustainable development, doesn't actually apply to this one because of the impact on the Ramsar site that hasn't been mitigated. So the application was dismissed. The second application was for one detached dwelling at land to the northeast of Longacre in Stoke St Gregory. The only issue there was the location. The inspector felt that whilst the distance of the site from services and from transport modes, so sustainable transport modes, including the fact that the closest bus stop was 400 metres away, but not only 400 metres away, but 400 metres away along an unattractive path, an unlit path that was unlikely to be used, and so that there would be a reliance on the private car. So whilst the inspector gave some weight to the fact we haven't got a 5-year land supply in applying the tilted balance, the inspector felt that the harms in this instance would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of just providing one house. It's an interesting one because I remember probably 2 committee cycles ago, I presented one where the inspector listed numbers of bullet points as long as your arm, saying why it was harmful, and then gave weight to the one dwelling. So there's a slight lack of consistency there, and I suppose that's planning for you. But I'm pleased to say that this was up. I'm pleased to say this was up. The council's position was upheld. The inspector did look at the Ramsar site and impact on that, but felt that as they'd already found harm on other substantive grounds, there was no need to carry out an appropriate assessment in terms of the Ramsar site impact. So again, Somerset Levels and Moors, SPA and Ramsar site. The third and last appeal I want to talk about was the change of use. This was of land, agricultural land, into a gypsy travellers site at Oxford Lane, Green Acres, North Curry. It's for 16 pitches, including static homes, touring caravans, treatment plant, hard standing entrance gates, etc., etc. This was subject of a very long public inquiry that my colleague Dawn de Vries was the key witness at. And the inspector felt that the key issues were the balance for the general need for gypsy and traveller accommodation, which we acknowledge we haven't got a suitable supply, but then can balance that against things like the impact on the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar site, which, as we say now, has the same status as the European sites in terms of habitats, effect on the ecological value of the site, issues of highway safety, living conditions of 6 Oxon Lane, whether it would accord with development plan policies concerning development in the countryside, impact on character of the area, and adequate means of surface water drainage. the inspector agreed with the council on all of those points, that it wasn't suitably drained, that there would be harm to the six Oxon Lane occupiers, that the character and appearance of the area would be damaged, and that it's not a sustainable location again, that there would be harmful impacts on highway safety, that the ecological value site, and having particular regard to great crested newts, dormice and reptiles, it hadn't been demonstrated that the development wouldn't have a harmful impact. Similarly, the impact on the Ramsar site. So in doing the overall planning balance, the inspector did give great weight to the fact that there is a need for gypsy and travel accommodation, and to the personal circumstances of the applicants, but felt that the harms did significantly and demonstrably outweigh any benefits. The one other thing that I thought was quite interesting in terms of this one, not something we often see, but the inspector did look at the issue of intentionally unauthorised development on the basis there had been an injunction in earlier times, and there's further legal work going on in respect to this site. But the inspector actually said that given the previous, whilst none of the site occupants or intended occupiers were named on the current interim injunction, on the interim injunction were named on the original injunction, the appellant himself was the same applicant for a single traveller pitch, and so must have known that there was an injunction there. And on that basis, the inspector said they have little doubt the appellant would have been aware of the relevance of the site history and knowingly proceeded to commence works and residential occupation of the land in 24 without planning permission. The extent of works undertaken through coordinated efforts is not limited in either scale or extent, and some works have continued more recently, such as works at the access. In light of the circumstance of the case, intentionally unauthorised development forms a consideration that weighs against the scheme. So whilst I've no doubt it would have been dismissed anyway, I think it's quite helpful and interesting that the inspector has particularly brought up that point, and that will be helpful for us in respect to other sites. So undertook the planning balance and dismissed the application. As the inspector points out, there is an interim injunction, and I believe that's been granted, and I believe we are now in process of looking for a permanent injunction that would involve ultimately removal of unauthorised development from the site. There's a few steps to go through, a few hoops to jump through legally, but I think that's the next step. Just the other interesting thing about it was the cost decision, and if you do have 5 minutes to read it, it starts on page 104 of the agenda. I've never seen a cost decision like this in 30 years where the inspector was quite so cross with the appellant. I've seen ones where the inspector has been really cross with the council before, but the inspector really felt that the appellant had behaved unreasonably, particularly in terms of the voluminous amount of information they provided, and at short notice, and their changes of position, and felt that it put the council in a very unenviable position. And so the inspector did award that Mr. Peter Richards shall pay the costs of the appeal proceedings limited to those costs described in paragraph 12. Such costs to be assessed in the court's cost office if not agreed. So this is one where we will be seeking, we will be sending a bill over for our costs involved in the appeal. I don't know if that's happened yet, or if you're aware of this one, Catriona. Still counting. But again, that was quite an interesting read, because as I say, I've seen a lot of cost decisions. They're normally incredibly balanced, and they often it's no unreasonable behaviour. Even where there is unreasonable behaviour, it's normally very nuanced and balanced either way. But this one, it was clear the inspector wasn't having any of it. So.